What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 660 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, presented by the City of Vineland. It's KB coming at you solo dolo because that's effectively what this show has turned into. It's a solo Philly sports show with yours truly, and I try to bring in guests and friends along the way. Been a lot of format changes over, 6.5 years, and that's just how we got to rock and roll. But this one will be kind of a shorter but straight to the point episode, as we will be grading and breaking down the Phillies trade deadline, talking about some of the trade deadline moves that have happened across Major League Baseball, and whether or not I think the Phillies did enough at this trade deadline to push their way towards a World Series championship. But before we get into all of that, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at Underground PHI, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. You can also subscribe to the pod there. You can follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311. I just realized I did all that out of whack. Apologies. But follow us on the socials. Follow me, KBIZZL311, KBIZZLE11 on Instagram and Threads. Subscribe to the pod, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Leave a 5-star rating and review. It goes a long way for helping the show continue to grow. Allows us to do more dope stuff with and for you guys, and allows us to turn Underground Sports Philadelphia into our full-time jobs. So keep subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. That is where you get full video episodes of this show twice a week, every single week. I know we've been a little behind on uploads, but we are working our way back because that's what we do, baby. We don't quit. Keep subscribing, smash that like button, ring the bell icon, leave a comment down below your thoughts on all the moves the Phillies made at the trade deadline. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's make it happen. YouTube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. And of course, guys, this show is presented by the City of Vineland, and the City of Vineland Municipal Calendar features city-organized, city-sponsored, and city-affiliated events that are of public interest. The calendar, which is accessible at vinelandcity.org, is a good way for residents and visitors to build awareness, remain engaged with city government, and participate in local events. You can also follow the City of Vineland on social media via their Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube pages. And through these tools, you can stay connected to the community and get important announcements about programs and services offered by the city. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast, and Security 21 Security Systems, the official partner of our trade alerts this trade deadline. Let's get into it. The Security 21 trade deadline recap, as the Phillies have made some moves. We will start with the most recent move, just to go in list order, and that is Austin Hayes from the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for Seranthony Dominguez and Christian Pache. And then the Phillies went and traded for reliever Carlos Estevez from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim for Samuel Aldeguerin and George Clausen. And then when it felt like the going was over, the Phillies went in and acquired Tanner Banks from the Chicago White Sox in exchange for a minor league player that I have to pull up the name for, because when we posted the alert, the name was not made available at the time just yet. But I do like Tanner Banks because it's Banks at the bank. Tanner Banks was traded in exchange for, let's see here. Here we go. Tanner Banks. Tanner Banks. Where is it? Here we go. Tanner Banks. William Bergolla. Right? This is terrible podcasting, and I apologize. Should have had this prepared, but I totally forgot on our trade deadline graphic. We just put the report out, and we didn't have the overall terms of the deal just yet. And, yes, William Bergolla. Apologies there. So Tanner Banks for William Bergolla, and then the Phillies' final move was acquiring reliever Seth Johnson and a single A prospect from the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for Gregory Soto. So our grades here, because we got a grade big baby Dave Dombrowski, and I am very bummed that we were not able to use the ever illustrious soundbite clip from Jared Carrabis, Baseball is Dead podcast, saying Davey Big Dick Dombrowski to define this trade deadline. So that's kind of where you put it in perspective of where I view how things shook out. We will start with the first trade, and that's Austin Hayes. And on the most recent episode, you guys heard my thoughts on Hayes and Estevez. I was not a huge fan of this trade. For the person, I was not a huge fan of this trade in terms of how the Phillies announced they were going to be using Austin Hayes. You know, the jury is still out. We'll see how things play out, but I overall give this grade a C+. You know, you moved on from Christian Pache, who, by all means, great person, great vibes guy, but was not hitting to the degree that you need somebody hitting that is a member of your major league roster. Sir Anthony Dominguez, you guys know how I feel about Sir Anthony. I love him. I think he is just such a special player, and it's unfortunate it just didn't overall work out here. So I gave this move a C+ in a baseball stratosphere type of move. Carlos Estevez, I gave this move an A-, I believe, on the most recent episode. I love this move. I think Estevez fits into the culture of this Phillies team so perfectly well, and he's an unbelievable baseball player. And I think it's going to bump up to an A+ if the Phillies are able to re-sign Carlos Estevez, when the time comes to make that type of move. I think it is the right move that you have to make when it comes to a Carlos Estevez. So I like the move a lot. Tanner Banks, I think this move is super smart. It's an under-the-radar move that I think will pay dividends for the Phillies down the stretch. I like this move a lot. I'm giving it a solid B. He's a 32-year-old reliever. Remains to be seen how well he'll pitch for the Phillies. You know, switching up ballparks for a reliever can be different for your approach, but Tanner Banks is really, 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 really good against left-handed hitters. So I like this move a lot. I think he's a great pitcher and kind of flew under the radar as part of this White Sox fire sale that they went through. And I really like the move there for Tanner Banks in the bullpen. And then you kind of offset it. You trade Gregory Soto, and you acquire somebody with upside that's in Double-A for the Phillies, more than likely, in Seth Johnson. And you move on from Gregory Soto, who had his ups, had his downs. But at the end of the day, were you going to rely on Gregory Soto in the postseason? I highly doubt it. And it just felt like the time had come. Unfortunately, it wasn't a long time that Gregory Soto was here. But I like that the Phillies made they made the move when the time was right. They cashed in on a successful month and a half of Gregory Soto relief appearances. Got somebody they feel has upside, could potentially be this year's Orion Kerkering and pitching out of the bullpen in September. So I like the move from that perspective a lot. And I think it remains to be seen what gets, what Seth Johnson brings to the table for this team. I know he's 25. That's not an ideal age for somebody that's still in the minor leagues, but I think in the right opportunity, Seth Johnson can be a pivotal piece to the back end of a September bullpen, and he's the number 8 prospect for the Baltimore Orioles. That has to mean something in a farm system that is absolutely loaded and packed to the gills. So this move, I give another solid B. I give this an awesome B grade. And effectively, this trade with the Orioles is almost like a 3-team trade with the White Sox, the way that it worked out, because you traded Gregory Soto while also acquiring another left-handed reliever from the White Sox. So all in all, it was almost like a let's make this trade so that this trade happens type of thing. It was very like NBA type deal. But I think the Phillies made out solidly there. So, a C+ in the Austin Hayes deal, A- for Carlos Estevez, a B for Tanner Banks, and a B for the Seth Johnson trade. Overall, this trade deadline for the Philadelphia Phillies, in my opinion, shakes out to be a high C+, low B-. I think, you got Austin Hayes, who, hitting-wise, baseball-wise, can be productive and can hit a bit better than Christian Pache. You got Tanner Banks, you got Carlos Estevez, so you upgraded your bullpen, which I think some people had questions about the bullpen overall. Fair enough. My biggest gripe here is you didn't go and get another starting pitcher who can be a swing man, can be, a Michael Lorenzen type that you acquired last year at the trade deadline, getting Michael Lorenzen, when you knew Ranger Suarez was on the injured list, when you knew Taijuan Walker's still out. Tyler Phillips, who knows how long that magic is going to last. I would have liked to have seen them try to acquire another starting pitcher, another, back end of the rotation type guy, whether it was a Nathan Eovaldi or something of that type. The other thing I didn't like was not acquiring another additional bat. To go out and not get another bat for this bench that I think has been the Achilles heel of this team for the last 2 seasons now. Last year, definite, red flag for the bench. This year, in my opinion, a definite red flag overall. When you look at the bench right now, it is Johan Rojas / Brandon Marsh / Austin Hayes. It's Garrett Stubbs, it's Edmundo Sosa, and it's either Cody Clemens, Weston Wilson, whoever is on the roster at the time. To me, that's not ideal, to say the least. I really think they could have benefited from another bat off the bench, like a big bopper type of bat. It was surprising to me that they didn't go and get Brent Rooker. It was surprising to me that, they didn't try and make a move for Luis Robert. It was surprising to me that they didn't try to make a move for a Taylor Ward from the Angels. We've seen them make multiple moves with the Angels that were separate from each other in years past. A lot of this deadline was very surprising to me when it came to the Philadelphia Phillies. And, all in all, is it a failure of a deadline? No. I think it was underwhelming to a degree. But when you also look at it, this team is built 1 through 9 and pitching staff-wise to compete. Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh. Those boys got to hit. The whole lineup has to hit in order for this team to be successful. And while it's frustrating to not get that additional kind of Matt Stairs type of move to add to your bench, you have pieces in place to succeed. And that's where the Phillies, they've been struggling lately, but that's where they need to overall step up, is the guys who are on this roster have to come through in the clutch and have to be productive and have to showcase why this is a billion-dollar lineup. And I think the front office trusts that they're going to be able to find their form. This is just kind of a bump in the road. And once you figure out your form, you move forward and you keep it pushing. My only concern is when the playoffs roll around, we've seen these bats go cold. And to not have somebody off the bench, like like some of those names I mentioned, even like a Josh Bell who was put on revocable waivers. I would have loved to have seen Josh Bell in a Phillies uniform. It is one of those things that you have to overall be prepared with the guys who you went into spring training with to be the ones that help carry you to the successes that you're looking for. And that's where Bryce Harper has to be Bryce Harper. That's where Trey Turner has to be Trey Turner. That's where Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm, Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh. These guys have to be who they are. Bryson Stott. It's a total team effort at the end of the day. As much as baseball is celebrated for individual accolades and efforts, it is so much a team sport where everyone needs to pick the other person right back up if they fall down. And I understand that from Dave Dombrowski. And what I'll give them credit for is this is such an anti-Dave Dombrowski type of deadline, where in years past, this is the type of deadline with former teams that Dave Dombrowski worked for, where he would tear down the farm system, whether it was the Marlins, the Tigers, the Red Sox. He would be trading high-caliber marquee pieces of this franchise away, this franchise's future away, to get those win-now pieces and potentially win a World Series and bolster his resume and be that lock for the Hall of Fame and be the first to do so many different things. But he hasn't done that. He has not done that in any of the years he's been with the Phillies. Look at 2021, 22, 23, and now 24. The biggest piece he's traded away is Logan O'Hoppe. At the end of the day. At the end of the day, the biggest piece that Dave Dombrowski has ever traded away since being in charge of the Philadelphia Phillies is Logan O'Hoppe, who has turned into be a very high-caliber Major League player, and I'll give him credit for that. But when JT Realmuto is here, Logan O'Hoppe is being blocked from reaching his full potential. Other than Logan O'Hoppe, though, no prospect that Dave Dombrowski has traded away has panned out to be anything, and no prospect in our, forefront of Phillies fandom outside of two guys, Logan O'Hoppe and Carlos Carrasco, have gone on to have successful major league careers. And Logan O'Hoppe is still so young that the jury is still out, obviously, but I think he's on his way to being a great Major League Baseball player. That's the thing, is prospects are such a crapshoot in Major League Baseball that you don't know what you have. But I think the Phillies know what they have in a lot of these high-end prospects, that they are willing to take that risk of holding on to them and seeing what they can do for this team in the near future. This team is not a young roster. At the end of the day, you look at the core of this team that should be competing for World Series titles for the next half decade. They're not young. They are in their prime. They will be in their 30s moving forward. Outside of Boehm, Stott, and Marsh, the core of this team is in their early to mid-30s. So that is something that, the Phillies are holding on to the Justin Crawfords and the Andrew Painters and the Aiden Millers and the Mick Abels and so many other of these high-end prospects because they know that those guys could be contributing for them down the line. And I think down the line, we'll be thankful that Dave Dombrowski never traded those guys away. And right now it's frustrating that the Phillies did not go in and make power moves to better this roster for the now. And I understand that. But I do like that this has been Dave Dombrowski's approach to running this organization and this go-round for him of being the head executive of running a baseball team. He has not been so eager to push the buttons of blowing up a farm system with this Phillies team. And I think that's smart. I think that is organizationally sound to keep this team in contention, not only when this core, comes to a close, but you have the next core lining up with Justin Crawford, with Aiden Miller, with Andrew Painter, and whoever else comes through the system. You know, you have pieces in place. You signed Christopher Sanchez long term. You've got pieces here that will be here for quite some time. So I think they made the moves that they felt were necessary. Getting that back end of the bullpen piece. Getting another lefty out of the bullpen that you feel more confident in than you did with Seranthony Dominguez, with Gregory Soto. Getting a guy who you feel could, and this is just my interpretation of it with the Seth Johnson move, could be your 2024 Orion Kerkering in September. And you got Austin Hayes to be your platoon / everyday guy with Brandon Marsh / Johan Rojas. Overall, it's a low B score for me for this deadline. It was underwhelming, but I did see a great tweet. I forget who posted it, but it was a great trade deadline for players that are just A-okay. And that's really what it was. There was no blockbuster move. Like, Jack Flaherty was the biggest player traded at the deadline, in my opinion. Like, Luis Arraez was traded in May. It's not like he was traded in July. So, I mean, there's a lot to take away from this deadline that maybe the market wasn't there for a Mason Miller, for a Brent Rooker, for Luis Robert, for, you know, some of these other players that have been thrown around, for a Crochet. You know, there were so many players being named in hypothetical trades that none of those guys got moved, and those were kind of the big headline names. And like I mentioned, Jack Flaherty was kind of the biggest name dealt at the deadline. So I mean, like, you take that for what it is, and you keep moving forward. You know, Jazz Chisholm Jr., another big name that was moved, as the Phillies just saw against the Yankees in a dreadful series, and I wish the Phillies had acquired Jazz Chisholm Jr. I'll tell you that much. He was like one of my top targets for this team. If you've listened to the pod, that's who I really, really wanted if they couldn't get Luis Robert. And Jazz Chisholm made the Phillies look like absolute buffoons. But, you know, all in all, it's a rough skid for the Phillies right now. It has not been ideal. You lose that A's series going to the All-Star break. You come out slow against the Pirates. Come out slow against the Twins. You look bad against the Guardians. You look bad against the Yankees. And now you go out west to play the Mariners, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks. There's a lot to prepare for in those series for sure. And hopefully these guys that you acquired at the deadline can contribute for you here down the stretch in August and September and into October, and hopefully in November when the World Series is being played, and they're part of the team that's going down Broad Street with the Philadelphia Phillies. So, that being said, it's a high C, low B for me for this Phillies trade deadline. Is it the best trade deadline for the Phillies? I'd say no. I'd say it's probably the second best in the Dave Dombrowski era, just behind 2022 when they acquired Brandon Marsh and Noah Syndergaard as kind of your key players acquired at the deadline. And the only reason I say it's in front of last year is because Rodolfo Castro turned into nothing. He's in the minors, and Michael Lorenzen unfortunately did not pitch the postseason and is no longer on the team, where you also acquired 4 guys at this deadline, and I think that's huge. You know, in terms of just Dave Dombrowski pushing buttons to acquire players. You get Austin Hayes, Estevez, Banks, and Seth Johnson, plus 2 minor leaguers. Or 1 minor leaguer, I'm sorry. Seth Johnson is in the minors. So we'll see, you know, how it all shakes out. Overall, I'm not mad. I'm a little disappointed just with the return. But I think they made some smart moves. I think they made some calculated moves. And we should feel okay about this trade deadline because at the end of the day, the guys who have been on this roster since spring training and have been on this roster for years now have to be the ones that carry this team. They have to be the ones that hit. They have to be the ones that pitch. And you added some seasoning and some spice to the lineup by going out and getting some of these players. Now, I'm not saying Austin Hayes put spice on his food per se, but I think getting Carlos Estevez is one of the biggest moves Dave Dombrowski has made in his Phillies tenure via trade. I think he is certainly one of the biggest moves that the Phillies have made over the last 4 years, along with Brandon Marsh, along with getting Michael Lorenzen. You moved a top 10 prospect to get Lorenzen on this team at the time, and I think Lorenzen, made his mark. He made history, threw a no-hitter in a Phillies uniform. That's huge. From a historical context, you acquired a guy that pitched so well he threw a no-hitter. But the jury remains to be seen on these players, and we'll see how things shake out. But overall, I'm not mad at this deadline. I'm just disappointed that we didn't get the big bopper bat to add to this lineup that we know at the end of the day is going to find their swagger again. They're going to start hitting, they're going to start mashing, and get back to where they need to be once it's time for the playoffs to roll around. And hopefully when those playoffs roll around, those bats stay hot this time, and we're talking about a World Series championship roster. So again, Dave Dombrowski, you get like an 84 out of 100 on the test from me, which is a low B. And we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see how it shakes out. And it's not like big names were moved at this deadline, like I mentioned. Like I said, Jack Flaherty and Jazz Chisholm Jr. are probably the two biggest names that were moved at the deadline. Everyone else that was traded for was not like an earth-shattering type of move. They were marginal, playing the margins game type of moves. And I think when you do that, when a trade deadline shakes out that way, you have to sit back and realize, okay, maybe the market wasn't there for some of the big names. And let's take a look at the roster that we have here at home that has the big names on it. What do they have to do to keep making us successful? And I think that's how Phillies fans have to approach this one. So I mean, while it can be disappointing, we can also look at things from that perspective and say, hey, we've been down on our laurels for the past couple of series now. This team is known to get hot when they need to. They're going to figure some things out. They got to figure their approach out at the plate, figure some things out pitching-wise. They're going to be okay. This team's going to be all right. It's not like they're going to, fall off a cliff. Baseball is a long season, and like I've been mentioning time and time again, this team is so used to the cold streak being at the beginning of the year, starting slow. So when you don't start slow and you go on this tear to start the year and you build up this equity of wins and, belief and trust from the fans, and it kind of starts feeling like it's crashing down because you're hitting a bump in the road in July when everyone's tuned in, you start to get a little bit of Chicken Little syndrome, and it feels like the sky is falling. But trust me, this team's going to figure some things out. I think it's going to be all right. We're going to be okay. I like a lot of the moves they made. And at the end of the day, the boys at home got to hit, they got to pitch, and figure some things out on their own to make sure that these moves at the deadline were worth making. Big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems for being the sponsor and provider of our trade alerts for you at the deadline. Make sure you check out their website, linked in the description. And of course, keep subscribing, guys. Keep on following us for more Philly sports updates. I know we've been very baseball heavy this summer, rightfully so. We will be talking more Eagles very soon. Talking some Sixers and Joel Embiid at the Olympics, and a whole lot more in the very near future. So be sure to follow us at Underground PHI, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch. Follow us. You can follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311 and on Instagram and Threads at KBIZZLE11. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does help the show continue to grow, helps more people find Underground Sports Philadelphia, and allows us to do more dope stuff with and for you guys. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, smash the like button, ring the bell icon, leave a comment down below with your trade grades for the 2024 Philadelphia Phillies trade deadline, and be a friend, tell a friend to subscribe to the YouTube channel because it really does go a long way for helping the show continue to grow and helps us, make the dreams into a reality here at Underground Sports. And of course, guys, get your merch from our awesome merch partners, phiapparel.co. It's been going across the ticker at the bottom, and it's linked in the description. Use code Underground for 10% off your merch orders. And this show is presented by the City of Vineland. And whether you're a company looking to expand, relocate, or you're a new business startup, selecting the right location is critical to your success. Vineland, New Jersey offers both an affordable business location and an excellent quality of life. The city's economic development department is a one-stop source for moving your project through the development and approval process. And their goal is to make this process as smooth as possible and to provide the fastest turnaround times in the region. If you are considering potential locations for your operation, contact the Vineland Economic Development Team at 856-794-4100. That's 856-794-4100. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. This has been episode number 660 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, trade deadline recap and grading episode. We'll be back with another episode when I get back from Baltimore covering the PLL, Johns Hopkins University at Homewood Field. But until then, I'm getting the heck up out of here, and I'm signing off. Go Phils. Let's figure it out, boys. Peace.